If you think political careers end because voters get bored, you're watching the wrong screen. This week, Elise Stefanik, one of the most recognizable Republican figures of the Trump era, stepped back from a planned run for governor of New York and indicated she won't seek re-election to Congress the way her future path had been framed. And that choice is being sold as a personal decision, a family decision, a scheduling decision. But it's bigger than that. Because when a politician with national visibility backs away from a statewide race, it rarely means the story is over. It usually means the math got ugly, the incentives shifted, and the power system quietly pulled the plug. So tonight, let's do this the right way. Not as a personality drama, not as a dunk, but as a clear, structural explanation of what this exit reveals about MAGA politics, donor power, primary incentives, and why certain states, especially New York, turn national brands into political liabilities. And most importantly, what this tells us about the Republican Party heading into 2026. Here's what happened, cleanly and in plain English. Elise Stefanik built a national profile inside the modern Republican Party. She positioned herself as a loyal, high-volume defender of Donald Trump's political project. Then she pivoted toward a governor's race in New York, targeting Kathy Hochul. But multiple signals, polling, coalition math, and internal party dynamics pointed to a brutal reality. Winning statewide in New York as a MAGA-branded figure is not just difficult, it's structurally uphill. So she hit the brakes. If you stop the analysis here, you get the headline version. She couldn't win, so she left. Or the moral version. Trump uses people and discards them. Those takes are emotionally satisfying, but they are not complete. The more revealing story is this. Stefanik's shift is a case study in how American political careers are managed like assets, expanded when the market is hot, restructured when the risk rises, and sometimes quietly liquidated when the path to victory collapses. And the reason that matters is because this is no longer rare. It's becoming normal. To understand the exit, you have to understand the terrain. New York is a special kind of political battlefield. It doesn't just punish Republicans, it punishes the wrong kind of Republican. A statewide GOP candidate in New York has to perform two tricks at the same time. First, they must keep the party base energized enough to survive internal pressure, especially from activists and donors who demand hard-edged national messaging. Second, they must persuade suburban and swing voters, especially in the New York metro orbit, that they won't import the chaos of national politics into state government. That's the reality. A coalition contest, not a purity contest. And here's the trap. The MAGA identity is built to win purity contests. It is not built to win coalition contests in blue states. In other words, MAGA is high-octane fuel. But in a state like New York, it can also be a fire hazard. So when Stefanik tried to pivot from national MAGA warrior to statewide executive contender, she ran into a mechanical conflict. The brand that raises your ceiling inside the party can lower your ceiling with the general electorate. That's not ideology, that's incentives and math. Now let's talk about the part most coverage skips. Money. Campaigns don't run on passion, they run on oxygen. Oxygen is fundraising, and fundraising is driven by one word: viability. In modern American politics, donors do not simply support candidates they like. They invest in candidates they believe can win. When donors see a path, money flows. When they see a dead end, money doesn't just slow down, it reroutes. And here's the uncomfortable truth. When the viability narrative collapses, the career narrative often collapses with it. If polling or internal intelligence suggests you're heading toward a high-profile statewide loss, your campaign doesn't just become hard, it becomes expensive in a second way. Expensive in reputation, expensive in future leverage, expensive in your next move. A loss in New York isn't just a loss, it can be a label. Couldn't close, couldn't expand the map, couldn't build a coalition. And once that label sticks, your value drops in the very marketplace that determines what comes next. So stepping back can be framed as weakness, but it can also be framed as capital preservation. This isn't only a political decision, it's a strategic risk management decision. Now here's the second hidden layer, the primary problem. In many Republican primaries right now, the reward system is not built around who can govern. It's built around who can signal harder, who can sound tougher, who can attack faster, who can prove loyalty louder. That kind of primary produces candidates optimized for performance, not for persuasion. And when you take a candidate optimized for performance and place them into a general election environment that demands coalition building, you get a predictable outcome. A base-strong campaign that can't expand. New York amplifies that mismatch. It turns the internal party incentive problem into an external election problem. That's why statewide Republicans in blue states often look like they're running two campaigns at once, one to survive their own side, and one to convince everyone else they aren't captive to it. And if you're already nationally branded as MAGA, that second campaign becomes far harder. Now let's address the emotional claim that dominates commentary. Trump destroys everyone he touches. There's a reason that line spreads. It feels true. But the more precise truth is sharper and more useful. In leader-centered politics, loyalty is not protection. Loyalty is a rental agreement. You rent status from the movement. You rent visibility from the leader. You rent relevance from the narrative. And the moment you stop being useful to the narrative, you can be dropped. Not because you betrayed anyone, not because you changed, but because the story moved on. That's why so many careers in the MAGA era look like rocket launches followed by sudden crashes. Loyalty gives lift. It does not guarantee landing gear. And this is where Stefanik's arc becomes a warning, not just about Trump, but about political dependence. Because the real question isn't whether she was loyal. The real question is whether she had leverage independent of the MAGA brand. Leverage means you can survive a narrative shift. Leverage means you can keep donors, voters, and institutions even when the movement isn't pushing you. When a politician's identity becomes fully tied to one figure, one faction, one story, they trade autonomy for access. That trade can be profitable. Until it isn't. Now here's the third layer that rarely gets discussed out loud. The exit is not always the end. In Washington, not running again is often a pivot, not a disappearance. The political economy of America has a built-in landing zone for recognizable figures. Media contracts, consulting, think tanks, lobbying adjacent roles, board opportunities, speaking circuits, and future appointments if the right administration returns. So here's what that means in plain terms. The system does not punish extremism the way voters assume it does. It simply monetizes it in different arenas. If you can't win statewide, you might still win in the attention economy. And the attention economy pays. That doesn't mean every politician is cynical. It means the incentive structure makes cynicism sustainable. And that's a democratic problem. Because it encourages a political class optimized not for solving public problems, but for staying relevant inside a permanent media war. Now let's zoom out. What does this tell us about the Republican Party going into 2026? It tells us the party is running two incompatible operating systems. The first is national MAGA branding, high engagement, high fundraising, high emotional loyalty, and high polarization. The second is state-by-state competitiveness, coalition demands, local issues, suburban moderation pressures, and institutional friction. In deep red states, the first system dominates. In swing states, there's tension. In blue states like New York, the first system can sabotage the second. That's the structural dilemma. A party can build its national identity around mobilizing the base, but that identity can simultaneously shrink the map. So when prominent figures step back from statewide races, it's not always because the movement is dying. Sometimes it's because the movement's branding is incompatible with the electorate they're trying to persuade. There's also a quieter factor people underestimate: the human cost of permanent conflict. Modern politics is constant warfare. social media outrage, endless fundraising pressure, permanent scandal cycles, primary threats fueled by viral clips. In that reality, some exits are not ideological, they're psychological, they're exhaustion. This is not sympathy, it's diagnosis. A system that rewards combat over competence will eventually drain the supply of people who actually want to govern. And when governance talent drains out, what fills the vacuum? Performers, influencers, provocateurs. That is how institutions decay, not through one dramatic collapse, but through a slow selection process that favors the wrong traits. Now bring this back to what you can take away as a voter. If American politics feels stuck, this is part of the reason. Because the real contest increasingly happens before you ever vote, inside primaries, donor networks, media ecosystems, and loyalty structures. By the time the general election arrives, the menu of choices has already been narrowed, not by what the median voter wants, but by what the incentive system rewards. That's why people feel disconnected. That's why politics feels theatrical, because too often, it is. So here's the sharp conclusion. Elise Stefanik stepping back is not just a personal story. It's a signal that the MAGA model is powerful, but fragile. Powerful in its ability to dominate internal party dynamics. Fragile in its ability to translate that dominance into statewide wins in hostile territory. And it's a reminder of the central rule of modern power. If your career is built on borrowed narrative, your career can be erased by a narrative shift. That's true for Republicans. It's true for Democrats. It's true for anyone who confuses attention with stability. Because attention is a wave, stability is a foundation, and most political careers today are surfing, not building. Now, I want to leave you with a question that cuts through the noise, and I want you to answer it in the comments. When major figures step back like this, do you see it as proof the MAGA era is weakening? Or do you see it as something colder? The machine simply refreshing the cast so the same incentives and the same political warfare can run another cycle? Drop your answer below. Seeing America and power more clearly.